I'm going to call the meeting.
Something going on behind me.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. Now, to the clerk, does the camera start when the meeting gets called to order?
Correct.
So before I call for approval of the agenda, there is a little task to be performed. But I wanted to wait until the camera was rolling so that this would be part of history forever and ever. And of course, Deb knows what I'm talking about. So Deb, come on up. We have a little certificate here for you from your fellow co-workers and council. Oh, that's your speech? Oh, okay.
You didn't think you were going to get away without me saying something, did you?
So Deb, a little certificate in recognition of your retirement, presented to Deb McKinstry. 27 years of dedicated service with the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal has earned you the respect and gratitude of your fellow colleagues. Retirement is a special time in one's life, and we hope you enjoy the opportunity to adjust your focus and your priorities as you transition to the newest phase of your life. So that comes very cheaply with my signature. This comes with an even greater degree of appreciation.
Thank you very much.
And maybe, it's too bad Peter isn't here.
Yeah, well, you kept showing up and you didn't give the plaques.
I'm going to, if you would, Wendy, get a picture with my camera too, if you don't mind.
Your favorite thing, Deb?
Yes, it's the best. On this particular occasion.
She doesn't mind giving it.
That's very nice. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But we haven't, wants us over this way a little bit.
Okay.
What we haven't determined yet is your full program for the newest phase of your life. We know that there's at least one trip in mind, but we don't know where the others are going. You're not saying too much about that.
Yeah.
Just one if you want to be in.
Okay.
Anybody else now for the rest of the council want to get in the picture here? Yeah, come on.
As long as you want me in. Tap the screen.
I get upset the screen and I said I'd love to get
Just the other two members here, come on. Dave, you want to get in here?
You don't want this picture spoiled.
Whoops.
Make everybody jealous with that tan. All right then.
Put it up on the website.
How many cameras you got?
Three. She's multitasking.
Professional photographer.
Who thought Steve would break them all?
Still haven't found a good photo.
Thank you very much.
Best wishes, Deb.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure. It's been a real
I
pleasure.
actually got a lot of job site review done because it didn't say
I
photographer.
said it's been a real pleasure, most of the time.
Most of the time, most of the time. I just do have a few words I just want to say.
Well,
If
yes.
no one minds. It is a kind of a momentous occasion.
She's not on the camera.
So I sort of think that everybody.
They went in front of the camera.
Oh, okay. Well, I just don't want to have my back to anybody. That's the problem. I want to make sure my message gets to everybody.
I thought you'd want to turn your back on us if you want.
No, so, yeah, so I will miss the people most of all, of course, but I think everybody says that when they retire because, you know, that's what makes our jobs really wonderful. And that's a pretty common thing for people to say, but a municipality can have the newest and the best facilities and equipment that money can buy. But without the people to clean them and operate them and manage them, they don't mean anything. They're not worth anything. Without township staff, our residents would not have any services at all. Not at all. I encourage everybody to remember that and to treat all staff members with the respect and the consideration that they deserve for all that they do, day in, day out, week in, week out. I've had incredible support from every single member of township staff, both present and past. And for that, I will be forever grateful. You're in good hands. I expect continued great things for this municipality. Thank you so much.
That's a universal one.
Oh, yeah.
Happy travel.
Oh, thank you. So looking forward to it.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Did I have everything? Is that a fire call? I think you're a fire call.
Is that a fire call, Becky? Okay, let us know where it is.
Okay.
I knew her dad. Everybody knew her dad. Yeah.
Well, with that little transition behind us, and sad as it is, I can go on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is now then approval of the agenda, and does someone have the motion to approve the agenda? Or no, we don't. Okay, so I just have Councillor Cameron moving. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor Deschamps. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And of course, the third item on the agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Any disclosures here this evening? No disclosures declared. And so item number 4 is business arising from the previous committee of the whole meeting minutes, if any, and that's the meeting that was held on January the 13th. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, I just have one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on page 5 of 7, and it's under recreation regarding the dehumidifier. When the manager got back from vacation, the staff was to follow up regarding whether or not that dehumidifier is working or going to be tested, or what? Is there any follow-up on that yet?
Through the chair, yes, I believe that was either discussed at budget meeting 2 or 3 with respect to the dehumidifier in the status of that dehumidifier. So
Okay, and
it was determined that I want to say it was around 15, 20 years old.
What it was all the drink,
It was from the old
yes,
Cardinal Arena.
so I take it then it's out of the equation.
It is out of the equation.
Thank you. Sorry about that. That's all I have.
Is there any other business arising? I had forgotten what we had decided to. Item number 5 on the agenda is delegations and presentations. We have none this evening. Item number 6, discussion items. I see there's nothing, but there are a number of action items, and so I'll start with action item 7A, the 4th quarter billing report. And the report is in front of us, and there's a bit of a narrative, but more interesting to me is the table. So I'm just going to see if there's any comments before I make a few comments of my own. So I'll start over here on the left side of the table. Comments or questions? Starting at the left.
and by me.
Councillor Cameron.
Just a couple, Mr. Mayor. We were down in permits approximately $5,000, but the total building permits collected in 19 increased over 16,000 over the 2018 fees collected. My question actually was there a number of permits? What was the number of permits issued on that?
So through the chair, I don't have the exact number of permits issued in 2019 at this time.
Okay, I would just be interested in knowing that number if that's possible. And I have another question on the last paragraph. To date, construction value of over $1 million, which includes a single family residence and a fourplex. Do you know, could I get some information on where the fourplex is being built?
I don't know the exact location of that fourplex.
Okay, if you could just let me know when is your convenience. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I'll run around the table here, Deputy Mayor.
No comments.
Councilor Hunter?
It's nice to see that, our residential go down in numbers, is up in value. And, note that, we did have a little commercial development, which is good to see. We haven't had much of that over some years, so always nice to see some commercial development coming forward. And our industrial certainly looks good, because we haven't had, this is local industrial building and coming forward instead of big ones moving in, so it's nice to see our local ones expanding.
Is it?
Yep.
And Mr. Bradley?
No comment, Mr.
And Mr. Robertson?
I'm really surprised to see the average home has increased by, by 94, almost $95,000. Quite an increase from the prior year, so we must be building some lot better homes, or
Bigger.
bigger,
Material price got.
or maybe, that could be.
So I have a couple of questions, and goes something like this. During the first part of the year, our permit fees were down a bit, and we ended the year actually collecting significantly more than we collected in 2018. And I believe that in 2018, we were required to dip into our reserve to subsidize or to balance the books on the operation of that department. And I'm just asking the question, now in 2019, having collected $102,000 in permit fees, will we have to be dipping into those reserves this year, and to what extent? Through the CEO to the treasurer.
Sure, certainly, through the chair, at this point, pre-audits suggests about $4,500 that we have to withdraw to make up the difference of expenditures over revenues.
Okay, so then that would mean that the budget for operating the chief building officer department would have been somewhere around 106, 107, something like 108, something.
108, I believe.
108, okay, and so that was the first question, and then of course the second question, or the second observation, I'll just follow up the same comment as Mr. Hunter. Our industrial project value at $4.4 million is considerably over the project value last year, and the commercial value of $411,000 considerably over last year's as well. And I think the year before, 2017, was where we saw the Giant Tiger come in. So following the Giant Tiger year, kind of a down year in 2018, and 2019 looking fairly interesting. He does give us a kind of an advanced look at 2020. 5 building permits issued for a total construction of value of $1 million and a bit. So actually, this report is quite reassuring. Any last minute questions before I move on? Okay, hearing none, vote go on then. And the next item on the agenda is the fourth quarter Treasury and Reserve Update Report. And I think what I'm going to do here, since the treasurer is here, I'll let the treasurer speak to the report first, and then if there's any questions, we can use the treasurer's report as follow-up. So to the treasurer first.
Certainly. So the first page of the financial report for the fourth quarter indicates our cash balances are up slightly more than last year of this time, and that's indicative of our both our accounts receivable and our tax receivable are lower than last year. So we've made some great strides in some collection, especially in the tax receivable portion. Currently up to date with a lot of our accounts payables at this point in the process. The next page is your long-term debt, indicates where we are. A lot of things were paid off two of the leasing things were paid off in 2019, as well as the Greenfield low lift. That really changes our debt to load right now. And the final is, of course, the capital. There's another report here with the capital project status. All of our projects are complete. There were a few variances with respect to, as we've already indicated in our previous report, Pittston Road was slightly over budget. We had anticipated to lease the pickup truck, but we purchased the pickup truck instead of leasing. But for the most part, all the rest of our projects came in or around budget. We have one more invoice with respect to the service delivery review that just came in, which will be paid. The service delivery review, there's one more invoice yet to come for it.
Okay. Is that it?
Then the last one is the reserve schedule, the update to the reserve schedule.
Now, is this reserve one that we have here, is this the same one we saw at the budget meeting the other night?
Somewhat differently, because the budget one is moving all of your 2019 to the first 2 or 3 columns, where this is showing just 2019, so there's no 2020. So it's not a replica of the one you saw earlier.
Right.
What's different in this particular one that you haven't seen in a prior quarter would be the building department reserve transfer out of the $4,500, which you see in the second to last, or the last, not last second, second to last column, as well as the use of modernization funds for the service delivery review. Those are the 2 areas that would have changed from a prior time.
The service delivery review, that's out of the modernization fund,
Correct,
3817 at the bottom?
correct. That, the service delivery review, as well as the eScribe, purchase of eScribe, is out of that reserve.
And we've earned $9,000 in interest on that, just the period of time that we've had it in.
Yes.
Okay, now, are there any questions of the treasurer? Okay, start with Mr. Robertson.
Are these post-audit entries all in here now?
There is still some audit entries that will occur on the schedule, reserve schedule for sure. I've not done any adjustments with respect to the water or wastewater until we finalize the audit, and then those transfers will come to council so that the committee can be aware of the positions in each of those water wastewater systems and the transfers to or from the reserves.
Thank you.
Mr. Bradley?
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor. Back on the financial report page, asset liability page, I noticed that the investment in the port went from 31 million to 34 million. Is that due to, what's that due
So
to?
at
The additional bins?
I can't say anything specific to that. Basically, the investment in the port is our share in the port. At the end of 2018, the numbers I had those are pre-audit numbers,
Okay.
and so are the 34 is 34 million. It was post-audit of 2018. So that's the difference, but with respect to the difference, it's probably their surplus from 2018 that's increased the 31 to the 34.
The next question is, in our budget meeting that we had, there was additional capital spent in 19 on the Pittston Road project. And you can see that if you look at the 2, I think Weir Road and Pittston Road were combined by the sense of a
project.
Mm-hmm. And you can see that where that overrun was, 80 something thousand, I think. Do we know what that was due to? Like, did we miss a culvert or something?
No, so Through the chair, that was some additional base repairs required on that section of the road. Yes.
Right. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Maybe, can we get a little bit more detail, what exactly was required there, because it's a significant amount, 80-some thousand.
Yes. So through the chair, there were some soft areas that, there were some more dig outs that we had to do to get a proper base in there before paving than anticipated. So,
Okay, now, at the time that work was authorized, was it authorized as a change order to the contract?
that work would have been done as a change order to the contract.
So, the actual, because when we issue those contracts, we generally make an allowance for change orders or changes or
Contingencies.
contingencies.
For change orders.
So, that change order would have been above the contingency, would it not?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I would anticipate that it wasn't.
Well,
Or would it?
except that we budget for the contingency. Like when you budget it, you have the contingency in the budget. And so if it exceeds the budget, it obviously exceeded the contingency, right?
Or did it?
I can't answer.
Well,
this
except the
particular-
budget number includes the contingency.
Well, I don't know whether it does.
I think it says plus 10%.
Well,
But the budget number, I don't know whether it includes the contingency or not, but the contract would, when we let the contract, does.
So, yeah, I'll have to confirm that if you leave that with me.
Kind of a follow-up question I have is, like, if you do a road like that and you run into these base issues, they kind of come as a surprise to the project, so, would that be due to, like, when we do a job like that, do we sample the base, do we do core samples or something on the base to determine whether the base is deficient, needs to be upgraded, or is it an engineering problem, or what would it be?
So it could be a combination of a number of things, but typically even with, if some subsurface investigation was done or some core sampling was done, it's spread out over that
Yeah, yeah.
long distance, so
You do hear
in
about
between,
problems there.
exactly, so, it doesn't always reveal, a particular soft section, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of interested in the answer to the contingency issue as well. Thank you.
Counselor Hunter?
Well, I see where we always run into trouble with some of our roads because they're hard topped long before the base was ready to be hard topped on, but, the only question I really have, is over on, our curbside and waste recycling that we were 12% over. How do we get over on that when we have a contract, set contract to pick up the waste?
Where are you at?
Through the chair, I think
Just maybe we find the page reference.
15 on 39, it says at the bottom of the page.
So that's the
So through-
Finance.
Through the chair, I believe Councilor Hunter is referring to an item on 7C.
Yeah.
We're still in 7.
Yeah.
So can you just hold that till we get to 7C? So definitely.
I think that's what the confusion was.
Okay, so over here?
Nothing here.
No. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Smith Road, you did lose on the Piston Road for sure, but by golly, you sure came in nice on Smith Road with the culvert with our staff. That's great to see. Cardinal Fishing Dock, like, keepers, that was a $24,000 dock. That's a lot of dough for a fishing dock.
Where are you looking?
On 12 of 39 where it says Cardinal Fishing Dock.
I'm going across, I'm seeing 13 spent and 10 budgeted.
13,409, and then South Nation put another 10 in it, and we put 10,000, that's 23, and we put 800 and some dollars into 18 towards it. So really, it's over 14,000, or 24,000.
Talking apples and oranges here, I think. The Cardinal Fishing Dock at 13,490 and 10,000 budgeted, that had nothing to do, or did it, with the South Nation dock?
That is, yes,
That is-
it is.
That is the South Nation dock.
Yes, that was a 50-50 split, I believe, that we,
50-50.
well, South Nation put in 10,
That's right.
and we put in 10.
But we put in 14 plus 800 and some dollars into 18. So it's a $24,000 dock, fishing dock, that's all I'm trying to say.
Okay, I got you.
Anybody catch any fish?
I hope
Pretty
so.
hard.
Okay,
Anyways, I just thought that was a little up and up. Special area, arena lighting, it's 19.7. Did we apply for any grants, like saveonenergy.ca on that, I wonder? Do we know? No?
I'm quite sure that we looked at the, going through that funding, but I believe that there was, with the local contractor, we were able to have that Save on Energy.
Good.
Better say that.
Good.
I think we initially looked at LAS through that program, but locally we were able to use that Save on Energy.
And there's one on saveonenergy.ca.
I believe that is the program that was
Thank you,
utilized.
that's it for me.
okay, so I'm going back, if I could, through the CAO to the treasurer. I'm going to start at page 10 of 39. On the taxes receivable, and I do notice quite an improvement over December 2018. But now we have a number of agreements in place. Does the cumulative total of the agreements that are in place blend into that 560?
In answer to your question, there are certainly some of our payment in place arrangements embedded in that 500,000. We still have some individuals who are not on payment in place. You'll see in a later report that there was some more submitted to Real Tax for collection. So there's a small number of properties that are not on a payment plan at all, and they're in registration at the moment.
Okay, so the 560 represents basically the total outstanding, including the ones that are not on payment plans.
Correct.
Okay, so that is quite an improvement, and we appreciate the extra work that goes into to getting that under control. The bank and the cash, the receivables are down a little bit, but I notice as well that the payables are down a couple $100,000, so that's very good as well. So then I'm looking at the schedule of long-term debt. We see the two vehicles dropping off in June of 2019. And we see the low lift station dropping off. So by and large, this long-term debt is in pretty good shape, I would say. And I'm assuming that we'll be discussing that again at another budget meeting. Now, just turning my attention just quickly to the capital project and going back to the Pittston Road, Pittston Road, Weir Road. I guess the only thing the only observation that I want to make is that when the change order exceeds the contingency, that change order should be brought to the attention of council, and I don't recall that it was, so just sort of flag that, so that, you know, if that happens again, we provide the contingency, which is at the discretion of staff, but when the amount goes in excess of the contingency, we should be notified. Now, my last set of questions hinges around page 13 of 39, which is the reserve and the reserve funds. So we start with the balance on December the 31st of 2018, and then we come to the balance on the 1st of January 2019, which is a day later, is it not?
Well, it's just basically showing the difference between the one year to the next. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a day later per se.
Okay, all right,
just
so
the
it's,
start of the year.
all of these adjustments are year-end adjustments.
Correct.
So we get to our opening balance on the 1st of January. Now, the transfers in and the transfers out, do they include the decisions? Looks like they don't. They don't include the decisions that we made at our last budget meeting.
That is correct, they do not.
Okay, all right, so this is still to be updated to reflect what happened at the last budget meeting.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so good report there. And I'll move then to the fourth, item 7C, which is the fourth quarter budget variance report. And now, did you want to highlight anything here before we go around to questions? I know Councillor Hunter has a question here. Is there anything that you'd prefer to highlight yourself?
For sure. I guess one of the consequences of being aggressive in collections of taxes is less revenue from tax penalty and interest. So that's a balance, I guess. We had budgeted for $155,000 and only achieved 102. As a result of that, I have lowered my expectations in 2020 for penalty and interest revenue. The offset of that is that we had budgeted in bank interest for $40,000 and we have $71,000 put into the bank. So it didn't completely offset the amount of penalty and interest because we charge at a much higher rate than what we earn. But that is a consequence of having that additional revenue, or that lower receivable. But I still think that's a good thing. I think what we ultimately do when we force those collections is that it stops that additional penalty on taxpayers and it makes it more affordable for them. So even though, and it's odd that you push them after 2 years and then a whole bunch of money comes and it gets resolved. So, but there is a good and bad about that. Our bylaw revenue is certainly up as a result of fines. Most of it is, a lot of it was, as we previously stated in a bylaw report, parking fines, such. That is collected revenue. That's not a receivable. That's actual revenue received. Our AR interest is up from budget as well, mainly due to the amount of money we recovered through the 730 Holdings account that we had sitting there. So again, we won't see that same kind of interest revenue bearing in 2020. Fire department, we did see a little bit more of an increase, and actually with the MTO claims for the last couple of years, we've seen more MTO revenue than we've received in prior years. So that's actually quite encouraging. We'll go into the development, the FDev, but and then we get into our expenditures, and I've only really put forward some of the more high level ones as that are fairly impactful, and we've already been, committee's already been advised of the truck repairs and winter control, of course. Fuel is up just slightly, it's not huge, but that overall department was over budget by almost 13%, Public Works, I mean. The curbside, as indicated there, is over 12%. We're doing investigation with respect to why it's over contract. So there is communication with the contractor right now. So we'll get back to council once we have found out information. That might be an area where we may find some savings, because I think there was an error in billing.
Okay, so I think Councillor Hunter, does that address your question?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, anything else then here?
Again, the other ones in recreation are not, they were very similar to stuff that's been provided to council before in other quarterlies. Vehicle repairs were up slightly. The pool repairs had a big problem with the Cardinal pool repairs, and that's kind of the reason why we had the filtration system on 2020, because we did incur some big pool filter repairs in 2019. And some building repairs to the Cardinal Arena are up over budget as well, slightly.
Okay, I'm gonna start at that side and go back around this way then. Councillor Dillabuck.
The revenues of the taxes and bylaw, fines and so on, job well done, especially, now, very nice, well done. Maybe the fire department, maybe Mr. Mayor, you, keep driving it home, that the MTO is, starting to pay off, and our chiefs and Vicky is doing their job.
I don't think that's, I think we should be asking what happened here.
Cardinal Arena, what happened? 34,520. The boiler repair. Didn't we put a $7,500 new boiler in there in April of 2019? Now is that
That would be
additional?
No.
The 34,000, or is that part of the?
part of that.
So we put another 25,000 in repairs on another, how many boilers are in there, I wonder? I know you,
No, I'm only identifying one boiler repair that was done. That wasn't multiple boiler repairs, that just one of the boiler repair, the boiler repair is one of the contributing factors to the budget, the overall expenditures. Not
Okay.
necessarily to the
Yes.
overall
Yeah, so
variance.
the overall building repairs were at 34,000, about 7,000 of that was a boiler repair.
Correct.
okay, so the 25,000 isn't another boiler repair,
No.
No.
it's other
It's
repairs.
other repairs
Like what?
that took place throughout the year.
Like, geez, that seems like a lot for a 6-year-old building. Like, how do we arrive at $25,000 extra? Does anybody know?
Well,
Specifically, I've outlined some of the bigger areas, but it was a lot of additional building repairs in terms of replacing and cleaning, and the arena was used a lot more this year, and with the result of the additional use, there was a lot more things that needed to be fixed and repaired to keep it at the level it is.
Okay,
We can
so,
certainly provide a more detailed report at Public Works and Environmental Services if that's required of the council committee.
well, can we just stop there for a second? Because I think that would be important to us. So you can document the 34,520 in terms of specific things. So, and you have the background information to be able to do that. Personally, I would like to see that report come forward. Do we have an understanding that that report will come forward?
Certainly.
Do we have an understanding that we're asking for that report? Do we have consensus on that? Okay, so we would like to see that.
So would you like to see that at the next Admin and Finance meeting?
Well, I'm thinking that it's already passed, it's been done, it's in the system. It should almost be possible to bring that forward at Public Works next Monday night.
Yeah,
If,
yes, it could be. I guess I was just looking at this committee, there's two members.
yeah, I know, that's
that
and that's the
was-
one thing that we're finding, because when we bring reports to different committees, different people get left out. So, okay, so I guess it would be better, well, there's no reason it can't appear both places. It's just that when we have these kind of questions, I think the sooner the answers come forward, the better. Is there any reason that it can't be circulated to us electronically? And those two gentlemen who are members of this committee would get it by that mechanism.
We could look at it at the budget meeting too, as well. You could look at Public Works next week, and then we could look again at the budget meeting, just as a review item.
Yes, let's do it that way, yeah.
And Mr. Mayor, you're not suggesting that they look at every entry, just maybe things over $1,000 or something would stick out?
Well, I'm picking up on Councillor Dilba's comment that the building is only 6 years old, and here we are spending $34,000 on repairs to the building. And I'm really interested to know what kinds of things are causing those kinds of repairs. I mean, that's a fairly significant amount of money.
72%.
Now, where am I here with the questioning? Councillor Dilba.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so now Councillor Cameron.
I'm going to make a comment on page 15 of 39. The service delivery review pointed out that we need fuel management and fleet management controls. I'm just hoping that the overages on the repairs and the fuel, we can address that when we finalize the service delivery review actions. That's all, just a comment.
Okay, I'm going this way then, Deputy Mayor.
The concerns that I had have been discussed already.
Councillor Hunter.
Well, looking at our recreation department, I'm not worried about $34,000 expense on repairs to $6 million arena after 6 years, as I am overspending $23,000 on the Cardinal Pool there for pump repair, and we're just talking about taking what our recreation director wanted to spend, I think it was $70,000 to replace the system down there. If we don't bite the bullet and replace this, or we're gonna have something else that we end up with another unexpected $25,000 repair or something this year on the pool, and then end up the next year tearing that all out and spending $70,000 putting a new one in then. So I'm just worrying that I know it's a lot of money, but if we don't go ahead and budget for it and get it in the works there, it looks to me like we're throwing good money after bad here, that we're fixing something just to hang on for a year and then take it out, so.
Well, first of all, just in response to that, the 23.9 has already been spent. And I think we heard from the facilities manager that it was doubtful that he would be able to get that system replaced this year because the companies that are involved in that business are more or less committed. At least that was his advice to the budget meeting, that the companies that are involved in that business are more or less committed this year, and it was not very likely that he would be able to get those repairs done prior to the end of the season. And I think he seemed to be agreeable to our plan, which was to put, if I recall correctly, to identify replacement of that system as a kind of a #1 priority that would get pre-budget approval in October, November, December. And we agreed to put $20,000 into a reserve, and then to top that up from the 2021 budget to ensure that the project would be done in 2021 by giving it pre-budget approval early enough before the end of the year that he would be able to get the work contracted to start prior to the pool opening in the spring. Now, in my mind, that's the way we left that issue. Are you suggesting that we should be reopening that issue?
No, I'm just suggesting that we make sure that this gets followed through on, that it's not something that gets lost along the way, because I know he said it can't get done before the season opens this year, but if we don't get it budgeted, if we don't get the contract out and let the contract, we're gonna end up in the same situation next year, because other people are gonna be budgeting to do this, and we're gonna be the same, we'll come in the next spring and we won't have had a contract gone for it, and we'll be sitting again trying to hang on. I just wanna make sure that it's highlighted, we all know that this is coming forward, and we need to let a contract for this as soon as possible to get it on the time frame that it's gonna get done.
Okay,
Do we know
so,
what the problem was?
well, the problem was basically identified as age. Deteriorating performance due to age.
So
And
did they put a new pump in or something?
No, I think there's, $23,000, I think, is probably more than a pump, is it not?
Yes, I believe it is. I believe there's piping repairs as well. So
Buried stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, so it would be a fairly extensive repair. The fact that that kind of a rather extensive repair has been already completed in 2019 tells me that I have a fairly high degree of confidence that we'll get through 2020. And surely to goodness, these kind of repairs. Now, of course, the facilities manager's concern is that he replaced a portion of the system, and maybe there are other portions that will break down this year, but to go to Councillor Hunter's point, I mean, I think we made the commitment that we would put the 20,000 into the reserve, and I think we also made the commitment that we would provide pre-budget approval in the fall, and I'm sure that Councillor Hunter won't let us forget that. I mean, but the point is that we were all of a mind and a good consensus to do it that way. So I think,
That's a pretty old pool, I would imagine the piping's metal, isn't it?
well, I suspect, yeah.
So it would get replaced with PVC or.
Anyway, does that handle your concern there for now?
Yeah, I just wanna make sure it's highlighted there, so it doesn't get missed along the way, so, the one other concern I had was on the recreation too, on the repairs to our recreation vehicles, we seem to have taken quite a 21% over budget on repairs to recreation vehicles. That's quite a jump in repairs on half-ton trucks in a year or so.
Well, you know, that's, I think that item has certainly been flagged at budget time, and later on in this meeting, I'm gonna speak to that issue, because in my mind, it's something that we're going to have to address in a more fulsome manner than we have in the last couple of years. So, if those are your concerns, can I move on?
Yeah.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes, well, you know, at the last budget meeting, we discussed the issues of the truck repairs and the winter control and all that stuff. And I see that there's a topic on the agenda for the fleet management and fuel management system. And I guess I think it would be helpful when those systems get brought in and put into place and the staff gets trained on it, that the council and Mr. Robertson and I have a little brief appreciation of how those systems are gonna work, because we're gonna get reports, and if we don't have a little bit of knowledge on how that management system and the fuel system work, we're gonna end up asking stupid questions, or, you know, not asking questions at all. So I just put that in as an additional point, you know, that is highlighted in that thing. But other than that, I don't have any additional comments.
Okay, and I'm the last, and I have the last, on page 15, the last item, refrigeration repairs. Which location was that done in? Cardinal or Spencerville? Or both?
Well, it's under Cardinal.
Well, that's what I wondered, if it was included in that. Okay,
Is that?
That is correct.
okay.
Again, you know, it's a $14,000 repair on a 6-year-old building. And, you know, I mean, when you look at, when you total it all up, 34,500, and then basically 14,000, I mean, that's $48,000 on not the structure of the building, but the interior mechanicals of the building. It just seems high to me. Through this, okay,
Through the
so
chair.
through the CAO to the
I
treasurer.
just wanted to make one point. It says building repairs, but that line is actually called building repairs and maintenance. And one of the things that does get coded to that particular line item is snow removal. And like it does in all the other, like in the town hall repairs, building repairs and maintenance line, snow removal is part of that. We don't segregate that out. So I think some of it, that is, it's not all repairs to the building, it's repairs and maintenance. So there's maintenance in terms of cleaning supplies, snow removal, and, you know, other such items like that. So they're going through, you know, we don't segregate the toilet paper and the paper towels and all that stuff, it all gets dumped into that one. So it's not all repairs, even though the term I've used there is building repairs and maintenance.
Okay, so that's a good mitigating argument. Do you have the functionality to be able to separate repairs from
We would
snow
have to
removal?
we would have to create a new line item, but we certainly can do that if that's the wish of council, but it's still gonna be a repairs and maintenance line, just less snow removal. But in the report back, we can delineate the amount that was repairs and kind of break out that amount so that you can get a better sense of what the actual repairs are.
Okay, so would you have the functionality to be able to add that line item in your 2020 ledgers?
For sure, at any point in time, yes.
At any
Probably
point.
better at the beginning of the year than it would be
Yeah.
for mid-year.
Yeah, so what I'm getting at is, could you add that line item now and then recapture what's happened in January to February the 10th?
Most definitely. The only thing is that in comparisons of year over year, you won't have that comparison.
No, we're not, that's right. Okay, so let's just go there for a second, because I think that that's a fairly significant piece of information that the treasurer's brought forward. And it makes me feel a little bit better to know that the 48,000 is not just repairs, that it does include things like cleaning materials and snow removal. Beg pardon?
Consumables.
Consumables.
Yeah.
So, am I the only one that thinks that having that separate line item to just focus on repairs would be a useful piece of information to judge
I
the
think you should have
mechanicals in
three
the building?
lines. I think you should have 3 lines. Snow removal, or whatever you wanna call it, parking lot maintenance or something, and consumables, and system repairs. That's the way I would have done it.
Is there a functionality to be able to do that?
I can certainly set up as many line items as you would like to see. I think that building repairs is really just building maintenance. The equipment or refrigeration is where is the functioning part of the building itself. Because refrigeration repairs, that's basically, you know, the refrigeration plant for the ice. That's what, if it didn't have that, it wouldn't be an arena.
No, but there are 100 other things that I'm thinking about, things like netting, the glass.
Painting.
Yeah, it would have all of that in there.
Yeah, that's all what I would call mechanicals related to how the mechanicals are standing up to age. So is there concurrence around the table to have a more line items breaking down these numbers? Do we have concurrence at that?
I'd agree to that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have concurrence on that. Councillor Cameron?
Just seeing we're on that topic of breaking down line items, and I've brought this forward before, that I would like to see the 3 canteens broken down as well, Spencerville, Cardinal, and the Legion Way canteens. I'd like to know what each one of them, what their expenses and revenue numbers are. If that's possible, and I'm sorry this conversation came that way, but there it is.
And that has been discussed.
That has
a couple
been
times.
discussed before, yes.
So through the chair, that, I don't think that is as simple as of a task as it may appear with respect to stock and
Inventory.
inventory.
Yeah.
And
So
Yeah.
because typically when the arena season ends, that's taken down to potentially the canteen at the park, and then it's brought back at the,
Good back
so
in.
we have,
Moved around, it's moved around.
that's
Higher
correct.
purchases.
So,
A lot of transfer of inventory just between the Spencerville and Cardinal Arena back and forth. too, so-
And you may, right, so it would be, it would be a large tracking.
Yes, but again, it's just a question of systems, setting up systems to make it
No,
happen.
that would be actually physically counting the products
The
each
product.
time you go to move it from the Spencerville Arena to the Cardinal Arena.
Maybe there would be less movement. You know, you probably organize things a little bit differently.
Yes, but I guess a number of those products are perishable.
Then you run out of stuff at Mud
I think
Arena.
that, like,
Yeah, but
I
it's
get-
not
I
being
get-
paid for anyway.
I guess what I'm saying, it's not really a very efficient, effective process to break it down for what you're going to achieve, and I'm not sure what you're going to achieve.
Well, I think the object, I mean, I know that if I was in business, I would certainly wanna know what each of my business units were doing. And I would wanna know where my profit and loss centers were, or profit or loss centers were. And I would wanna know if my Cardinal Arena is not making money, why isn't it? And why is the Cardinal Arena not making money, but the Spencerville Arena is? And I would wanna know that, because they're two different distinct operations. We may move product back and forth between those, but that doesn't change the fact that they're two distinct operations. And similarly, looking at the little concession stand down by the water, that is a separate operation as well. And if I was in business, I would sure want to know what each one of those was doing, and I would be very, very careful with my allocation of product into each of those distribution centers to know exactly what I was putting in and know exactly what I was getting out. I mean, that's just good business. But we seem to be able to find reasons not to do it. And to me, the arguments for the reasons not to do it don't trump the reasons for doing it in my mind. But I'd like to hear what other people have to say now that the question's been raised by the counselor. Can we just deal with that one issue till I hear whether we're gonna provide direction here or not? Go ahead.
I think it'd be a pretty sophisticated inventory system, moving it back and forth, and, you know, we almost have to hire an extra person to keep track of the movement.
Why?
Why don't know, just a suggestion. Don't shoot the messenger.
No, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. You're relaxed.
Just a thought, just a thought.
Next around the table, who else is speaking here?
Well, you know, look, I think if we consider it a profit center, we should know what's going on in there. And there's ways in which we could manage the movement of the inventory, or try to minimize that if we could. But also, I'd like to know what kind of margin levels we set. I mean, there's a difference between a markup and a margin. I don't know if the people operating those things understand that. They're never profitable as far as I can tell in the past, so I kind of like to, I know they're not huge amounts of money in terms of the total budget, but I'd like to see us maybe tighten the screws on that aspect a little bit.
The counterpoint to that is, though, even though they may not be generating huge amounts of profit, the problem is if they're not properly controlled, they can lead to huge amounts of losses.
Yeah.
That's what worries me, is the potentiality for losses. But anyway, Councillor Hunter.
Well, you're never gonna make a big profit off canteens. There's just not the profit margin there to make on it.
You
You
know-
know, too many times workers are scheduled in to work and the hockey team doesn't show up or something, you still gotta pay the girls for coming in. There's not a big markup on the materials we're selling there. There's not a huge markup to be head on. So we lose a couple of $1,000 one year and make a couple of $1,000 another year. To go into all this paperwork to figure out where every chocolate bars went, it's just a time, energy consuming effort for the staff that you're asking them to do more and more work for, what are you gonna gain out of it? Go find out you maybe lost 2,000 this year, the Spencerville lost 500 and Cardinal lost 700, what difference? We lost $2,000 over the year on the 3 canteens. It's
Why
like
did you lose money?
we
Why
provide
did-
jobs to 8 or
No.
9 kids, so.
But don't you wanna know why you lost the money?
We know why we lost the money, we don't sell enough
No.
stuff for the amount of people that are in there,
The
so.
point is, you don't know. The point is that you don't know. That is the whole point. You do not know why you lost money.
You better cut back on the inventory.
Yeah, you don't know whether you lost money because of shrinkage on your inventory. You don't know whether you lost money because your inventory went bad. You don't know whether you lost money because of problems with, I mean, there could be 40 different reasons that you lost money that has nothing to do, has absolutely nothing to do with margins or markups.
We
Anyway,
don't worry about it, we also create a laissez-faire attitude, which is bad.
that's the other part. But anyway, I want to see if I've got any kind of consensus emerging here. I've sort of got one, a middle of the rotor, a middle of the rotor, a one, a no, and Deputy Mayor.
I hate to think that staff doesn't know where profit and loss in regard to the canteen goes. I'm sure, given an amount of time, they could show, you know, the finances of the canteen and point out to us if they wanted to do a considerable, maybe not even a considerable amount of work to show us why there's profit and why there's potential loss. I think maybe the question, you know, listening to this conversation is it a service or is it a business? And if it's a service, then we deal with, you know, a positive or a negative dollar value that comes out of it. If it's a service we offer to the people that use the arena. If it's a business, then of course you need to take tighter controls. And if it's been going on for a long time, and we're not happy with that, then, you know, maybe you're looking at, you know, contracting that out if you're looking at making a profit. To me, it's a service. It's there for people to get a hot chocolate, and it comes along as part of the operating expenses.
So that's a no.
Well, you know my point, you know my standing, I mean, it's quite simple to move stock around, it's called stock transfer, and businesses use it every day of the week and whatnot. I mean, goodness gracious, friends of mine operations with 12 different branches, and you think, you know, that certainly wasn't a nightmare, you just control what is transferred. So, you know where I stand, I'd just like to see a breakdown of each canteen.
Okay, so we got, where am I? Got 3 to 2 at this point. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Councillor Dilbaugh.
Have we looked at, of subbing it out, have we looked at someone taking it over so we don't have to worry about this transfer?
Would you take it over if you didn't know the numbers?
Well, I wouldn't, but I know a company that would. It's called Fat Blast, and he took one over.
So, if I may, I'm sorry, I don't look at the canteens as anything to do with profit. I look at it that you're employing summer students and you're employing students over the winter in high school, and that's the bulk of where your costs come. And you can't control whether somebody eats at the canteen or they don't eat at the canteen, and you gotta keep your prices reasonable. We're talking about the canteen, the budget is 95,000, our actual was 92,000, you're talking about, you know, $2,300. I don't believe for a minute that any of the students are doing anything other than their best job. We're transferring stuff, everything, there's nothing that tells me that there's anything. But this is just a service, and we're doing a great thing by employing some high school students, some summer students, and, you know, great job to the township. That's
Is
just the
that
way that I
any
look at it.
reason to not have controls in place?
I believe that there are controls in place. It's just not to the level of each and every item being tracked before it goes one place to the next. But overall, it's being monitored. I just,
Well, I don't know that I have consensus around the table to break it up, which I'm a little bit disappointed, to break it up into 3 separate operations. I think what we're talking about here is not just nickels and dimes, and it's not just money. It's a whole. It's a whole mindset. And to say that because we're operating a service, we shouldn't operate it as a business, just doesn't cut it with me. I wouldn't operate my own business that way, and I'm very reluctant to operate the township business that way. I'm not comfortable with it. But if I don't have consensus around the table to break it out, we won't do it. But I'm disappointed, I'm gonna tell you that. There's a way of doing business, and there's a way of pretending that it doesn't matter. And it's only a few thousand here, or a few thousand there. What matters whether it's up, or whether it's down? I think a lot matters. But anyway, we've had the discussion. I'm not gonna push the issue, other than to say I'm disappointed. Now, so far, we're still on this item, which is the budget variance report, which is 7C, and we've been all around the table, except I've not dealt with my questions yet. And my questions come on page 15 of 39, and it's the same basic issue. Truck repairs at the top of the page, or close to the top of the page. $258,000 budgeted, $338,000 expended. It's all right to tell me that, well, the equipment is old, but why am I spending almost $80,000 more than I had budgeted to spend? Is there something wrong with my budgeting process? Is there something wrong with my control process? Is there something wrong with my governance process? Is there something wrong someplace else? Personally, if I was running that department, I would want to know. And as the mayor, I'm sitting here, this is taxpayer money, and I want to know why things deviate to that extent from budget. Now, it's easy to say, well, I mean, we've heard all the reasons why, but those reasons are reasons, they don't tell the whole story. And I think we've, as a governing body, we have an obligation to find the story here and to understand the story. We can keep buying machinery, we can replace every piece of machinery. Doesn't mean that we solve the problem. So that's my 2 cents worth. I'm not going to be labored on this issue, but I will at budget time when we come back to the next couple of budget meetings.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Is that comment is the, saying that the license fees are paid at the beginning of the year. Is there not a prepaid account set up in the general ledger to cover, is it paid in January for 2020?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Mr. Robertson, but the license fees, which is the vehicle license fees, are at the beginning of the year.
For
These are
2020?
No, these are not including any 2020 licensing,
Oh, okay,
if that's what you're trying to get at,
yeah.
no.
Oh, I misunderstood reading
if
it,
we-
and I thought it was,
If we pay them at the beginning of the year or prior to the beginning of the year, we put them in a prepaid expense and then
Okay,
expense
so,
them in the proper
so
period.
the note, license fees paid at the beginning of the year really has nothing to do with the overage.
No, you're correct, sir.
Right,
I would
okay,
say- I would
so-
say that is correct.
Okay, so strike that out, doesn't have anything to do.
Right.
So that doesn't help me because I'm looking for reasons.
It's worse.
Beg your pardon?
It's worse.
Okay, so, I've had my 2 cents worth. I'm gonna go on to 7D, which is committee and council remuneration. Now, where am I? This goes here.
Curbside, waste and recycling.
And this report is required under legislation. The numbers are here. Does anybody have any problem with the numbers opposite their name? Or my name, or anybody else's name? Go ahead.
Mine is at 71.89 for professional development. I think it was $30 for a ticket for the Chemphil, the North Grenville, Leeds Grenville course. What was the other $41.89?
Without looking at it specifically, I'm gonna say it was probably a training invoice that was divided up over 5 individuals.
Okay, so like
So I
something
don't-
that we came in and sat in
Correct.
through through here? Okay.
So whether it was,
I was trying my best to keep it at a goose egg.
yeah, I'm not sure the specific training invoice, but it would have been a training invoice that we had everybody here, and then I would have just apportioned it
Okay.
for each individual.
Awesome, thank you.
Sorry, what, is there any other questions here? Counselor Hunter?
Well, I don't really have a question with the numbers as much as the way they're compared to our bylaw for committee remuneration. We've got on here, we've got prices for conference and conventions, and prices for mileage, and prices for professional development, special meeting and council honorariums and court meetings are under separate bylaws that cover them, but these 3 parts in the center, as far as our remuneration for council goes, it states that total expenses in there, the mayor's entitled to $5,000, the deputy mayor $4,000, each councilor $3,500. So, obviously, you look at the thing, we're not adhering to that bylaw.
In what sense?
Well, we're broke down the numbers, $3,500 is all we're supposed to be entitled to expenses.
Each individual?
Yeah, for council and $4,000 for deputy mayor and $5,000 for yourself.
So where are we over here?
Our one councilor's way over.
Where?
third comment.
So,
But there's more included in this than just conventions.
Doesn't matter, our bylaw just says $3,500, that covers mileage and expenses and conferences. That's what it calls for. There's no separate line item that says anything for mileages or anything else, it just says total expenses, conferences, mileage, meals, or anything you're entitled to is 35, 4, and 5.
is that the way the bylaw is written?
Yeah.
Through the state or through the clerk?
Through the chair, yes, that certain individual has exceeded it as per the terms of our current bylaw. And the one that we're referring to for conferences and conventions, it's for the attendance of conferences and conventions, the registration, accommodations. So it is over by quite a bit.
The 4,800?
Correct.
Okay. All right, well, it's not the only budget line that's over, that's for sure.
However, the 75,70, which is the total, is well under.
Is that not correct?
Through the chair, it is correct, but we are basing it per council member.
Well, just as the budget line for trucks is for repairs, I mean, you know, so this one's over, has it been drawn to the attention of this individual?
The individual is aware of it, but it hasn't been drawn, no.
Okay, so you see this now for the first time?
Well, yes, well, this is for the first time, yes. Yes.
So you're gonna have to be more careful.
Well, we could put it that way.
Okay, any other comments with regard to this report? This report becomes public information,
It does.
right? Yeah, of course it has, and, you know, I mean, the act clearly indicates how the report has to be laid out. This satisfies all requirements of the act. Okay, any other issues?
I would just, I would just like to ask a question on this under professional development. I was under the impression that some of the seminars we came back here for and sat here were mandatory for us to take. So we're being penalized because it's mandatory?
Through the chair, certain things like AOD, accessibility training, council orientation training, things like that, those aren't included in this. That's not affecting your expenses at all, or remuneration.
So now I'm really at a problem here, because the answer to the deputy mayor's question was that $40-some related to some sort of a session that we were invoiced for, and it sounds like it was divided amongst the people that were here. Whether it was a mandatory session or not, I mean, what would that session have been if it wasn't mandatory? Why would? I guess what's bothering me.
You're not seeing the whole picture.
Well, what's really bothering me when I look at this is $299 spent for professional development. That's really bothering me. Here we have 5 elected individuals governing a $7 million budget, and the total professional development is $300. Personally, I think that's pretty skinny. And then I find out that if you come here to a meeting, it gets charged against you according to the bylaw. Well, go ahead. Is there a better explanation?
So, through the chair, the ones that are calculated for the professional development, they're ones that are over and above, say you're coming to a meeting for here through accessibility training. The ones that we're looking at here, as far as I'm aware, are ones that you're going out and about, so North Granville for the summit, to Augusta a couple months ago for fire suppression, fire training, things like that, I believe. The ones that we cover here are covered within the budget. This is over and above for professional training.
Okay, but that's not what we heard a few minutes ago. Okay, again, I don't want to sit here and belabor this, because, I mean, we're spending more time on this than we spent on an $86,000 overage on Pittston Road. So that's what I call out of whack. So I'm moving on.
What does that column mean? Is that like an admission fee to go and take a seminar or something? What is that?
Which?
Professional development. Like, what would cost $30 in the top line there, professional development? Like, that was charged to the individual because he attended something. How do you determine the 30? Is it
Can I
like-
clarify a little bit, because we're starting to get a little off base? Nobody was charged anything, just that it
It's
was an
attributed.
allocation.
It's attributed.
It's an allocation, and with this act, with this section of the act, we have to delineate any costs that are associated with each council member.
So what was the cost?
And the
Like,
concern
what-
of using this $30 against your 3,500 or 4,000 or 5,000 is not necessary. That part is not part of your 3,500. That's a completely separate line item in your council budget. But I have to, by the act, delineate any costs associated with each individual member's costs to have you as a member of council.
So how do you determine that cost?
Well, in some cases, we are billed specifically,
So
you know,
it's a
for,
fee, it could be a fee.
it is a fee
Yeah.
per person.
Yeah.
Or in the case of the $30, it was a specific invoice that said, you know, these 3 individuals
Yeah, yeah,
attended and
but
it's
it-
$30
The
a
point is,
piece.
it's not pulled out of the air.
No, it's not.
So would that $30 have been on an expense account that I submitted?
No.
No?
It would have been something that the township paid for you to attend that professional development. It has nothing to do with your reimbursements. Your reimbursements is another separate item, but on this particular form,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
has to be itemized how much was expensed for that particular member.
Yeah, no, I understand that part. I just don't know how you get it, that's all, or where it comes from.
So if the summit in North Grenville was $30 a person, and we paid you, or whatever, 41 something, right, we paid that for members to attend, then it's documented here as professional development. That's all.
Okay, all right, so, anyway, I'm moving on. And where am I? The next one is 7E, the status of tax arrears as of December 31. Now, this, you were about to talk to this one in the earlier agenda item, so this will give you your opportunity here to tell us where the monthly payment plans are. Through the
Okay.
chair, through the chair.
Certainly. So as I stated earlier in the meeting, we have achieved a much better tax receivable at the end of this year in comparison to our 2018 balance. There is, as part of that $560,000, there's $53,000 set aside in an account called tax sale properties. And it's all the costs associated, whether it's taxes or legal or whatever, associated with 3 properties. And once we sell those properties, then those proceeds are applied to this receivable. So if you took that 53 off of the 560, we'd be just over the 500,000. Typically, our process is to mail out in September and kind of a flag notice, that letters that says, you know, if you are still at an arrears of 2 years by the end of this year, then the property would go into a registration process, the start of a registration process. So this year we sent out 64 of those letters in comparison to last year we had 93. So it was much better. I think the first year last year was the first year of a 2-year. This is the second year of that, so we have less of those accounts. I think definitely the switch from a 3-year arrears down to a 2 has certainly helped our receivable as well, along with collections. So of the 64 properties that we sent letters to, we did set up some monthly payment plans. The ones that I'm suggesting, the 39 payment plans, are not the ones that owe us the 500,000. That's a portion of that 500,000, because in prior years, I have set up those same similar payment plans with individuals, okay? Then this year, in January, we did send out 18 more letters, reminding people that we're now sending you to collections. We flagged that again before I send it out. So of that, we did send between 19 and 20, we sent 7 more properties. 3 of them are 2020 and the other 4 were 2019 properties, or 2019 accounts we sent in 2019.
Okay, so there's 3 tax sale properties from,
No, there is no tax sale properties in the sense. There are 7 properties within real tax that are in the registration process. So they're all staged at different points. It depends on the date in which we sent them to registration. So it takes a year before they actually would go to a tax sale property
Okay,
status.
well then what does this sentence mean? The tax sale property amount of 53,000 in the total tax receivable is the cost associated with 3 tax sale properties held for resale.
Right, so in past, the township has vested properties into our own name because they did not sell at tax sale.
Yes,
So those 3 properties
are now vested with us.
are vested with us and sit as a receivable until such time as we declare them surplus and sell them.
Okay, so now what is the process to do that? They're vested with us now.
Right. It's a matter of, well, I know one is in the process of being sold shortly, so I believe, didn't we have through the chair, I just want to ask the clerk, we do have a property that's in the process of has been declared surplus and we're selling.
But that wasn't through tax sales process.
No, it's in that same receivable.
Oh, I see, yep,
It was a previous tax sale a long time ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So where am I?
I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
Well,
There are 3 properties
That
that
are
have
vested with
costs,
us.
that have costs associated,
Yeah.
53,000,
Yep,
that we can declare a surplus and sell.
yep.
To recoup.
To
And so
recoup
my
those
question
costs.
is, in order for us to change those properties to cash, we now have to declare them surplus and sell
Right, and I believe one of the properties has already been declared and is going to be sold shortly. So that amount will be, yeah,
It's not declared yet.
well, it hasn't been declared yet? Okay, will be soon declared, I guess.
them. Okay, so are.
And the other 2, we would have to bring forward an action item to committee to get direction for sure.
Okay, well, so that's my question. When will they be brought forward to be declared surplus so that we will know that they're on the market and available? Then that we have a firm plan to change them, the asset into cash.
I have no set date for that, sir.
Okay, all right, now the next question that I don't understand is, how did the properties, these were basically tax sale properties that somehow got vested with us. Did they get advertised for tax sale and there was no take-up on the sale? Is that how they ended up being vested with us?
That's usually the process. They were before my tenure here.
Oh, okay, so it goes back past that? Oh, okay. Well, can we have them brought forward then and declared surplus?
If I may, through the chair, I can't recall the specifics of the 3 properties, but oftentimes we end up with properties vested back to the township that aren't worth anything. That we can't, the reason they didn't sell during the tax sale process is because they are landlocked or simply not accessible, that they have no value to speak of.
Yeah, so in other words, the 53,000 may or may not ever be cash.
Well, the one property is about 50,000 of the 53,000, so I think we will cash that, but that property needs to be declared surplus and the land disposition policy followed. It just hasn't happened yet, because we are still consolidating that property.
So the hope is that will be coming in the next month or 2 to committee.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna make an effort then to realize and change this land to cash.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Now, the ones that are deemed to be of little value, nothing is ever worth 0, because everything's got a value, even though it may only be $1. Why wouldn't we bring them forward and just see what Mr. Market says?
If I may, again, through the chair,
Certainly.
the market spoke when there was advertised for tax sales and there were no takers at $1,000 or $1,500.
Yeah, but how long ago was that?
I can't answer that, Mr. Mayor, but I can tell you that if you wish to go to the expense of advertising a property for sale, getting an appraisal and doing all of that work before you can put it on the market, because that's what you have to do according to your land disposition policy, then we can certainly do that. It's just, in my view, not likely to realize enough money to make a difference.
Well, Mr. Market changes his mind every day. You know, you never know how he's thinking. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, the properties are moving briskly. I don't know where these are. So. Okay, all right, so now we've got, and taking a look at the little chart here, set up monthly payment plans during 2019. There were 39 payment plans set up. Collection letters, 18 collection letters sent out in January. And then 7 sent to real tax. Now, when we send them to real tax, is the instruction to real tax to put them up for tax sale?
When they're sent to real tax, they're basically, they're issued a tax certificate of registration, which takes a year to go through that process, because there's several stages through the registration process where any interested parties are notified by registered letter, and there's various aspects to that. So if they go through the entire year of the registration process and it still sits unpaid, then we would go to tax sale.
Okay, so there's only 7 of those. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
There's another 18 that are in 2-year arrears as of December the 31st, 2019. Is that correct?
There were 18 letters that were sent in January for people who had arrears of 2019, yes.
It's 2nd year arrears.
2-year arrears, yeah, anybody.
So those 18 are eligible for registration, to be put into registration.
3 of them were, sir.
3 of them?
3 of them were. 3 were sent to real tax in 2020.
Three of the 18.
3 of those 18 letters that we sent were actually put into registration in 2020.
Okay, all right, so they're embedded in the 7.
Right.
Okay. So 15 plus 3. And can you help me then understand the other 15?
I'm working with those individuals.
Okay, all right, so they're sort of possible that they'll come across with cash. Okay, all right, I understand. Any other questions here?
Yeah, just for my own information, like, if I don't pay my taxes in 2018, and I get a notice from you guys, and do we know how many of them continue not to pay their taxes in 19 and in 20?
I'll read off.
Like, are they typically never payers, or do they, oh, I didn't really mean to do that and I'm gonna fess up?
Without actually looking at it, all the accounts that are in this situation, I can't say that there's any one particular trend. You know, everybody has hard times,
Yeah,
so
Yeah.
it happens.
no doubt about that.
Well, we appreciate the, I mean, I know it's an arduous process, and we understand that, but we appreciate the effort that's made to keep them either current or register them. I mean, it's as simple as, I would never want us to get into the position that some of our neighbors are in, where they've never actually put property up for tax sale. I mean, doesn't help the situation at all. I think the fact that we're being so aggressive, word gets around the township that we are being aggressive about it, and it does encourage people to, you know, it does encourage people that there are ramifications and things that happen if you don't.
I like to use the word proactive, sir, instead of
Exactly.
aggressive.
Yeah.
Any further questions here? Okay, I'm moving on then with 7F, Service Delivery Review Update, and that's briefing note F. Again, there's no recommendation to come forward here. There is. The council authorized the purchase
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, that's
That's
seven.
another item.
Some other item.
Oh, okay, that's 7H. I'm on G.
Yeah, you're on F.
You're
I'm on F.
You're on F.
See, the e-scribe puts them both on the same piece of
Two-sided paper
paper.
is great.
Yeah.
It is confusing at times.
So, 7F then, do you want to speak to that, Mr. CAO?
Certainly can, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to update committee on a little bit of the activity. So the financial applications are coming up in 7G with some action. eScribe, we're on phase 1, and the package in front of you is done off of the eScribe software, and there's about 3 other stages that still require to take place, and we're hoping to be completely up and fully operational by June of this year. Actually, with the building permit software, the 3 municipalities did actually meet this afternoon. Didn't get as far forward as hoped, but we are progressing. So it may very well be the April Admin and Finance meeting before we can come back with any kind of full costs and
Do you
recommendations.
have agreement, like, do the 3 agree on the same system, or have you got divergence of opinion?
We are still working on a unanimous decision if we can get there. But we did take a couple steps forward today, I would say.
Jump in.
On that very same topic, I had it highlighted as well. Is there a chance that you're not gonna get full cooperation from the 3?
There are still a number of details that we need to work through. Yeah, it's not as simple as just costing. There's a number of process items that would function for necessarily, let's say, for our municipality that may not function for the other 2. So we're trying to work through all that and compare sort of apples to apples on the overall and see if there's really a solid advantage to going forward. And it's a work in progress, but I would say.
Can I just ask, you don't have to answer this.
No, just, I would leave this up to staff.
How's your gut feeling?
Well, you never know, these things change.
Your question's been answered.
Well, I mean, the staff's in a very difficult situation here. It takes 3 agreeing to make this deal come together, and, who knows? Is there any other questions for the CAO on this specific report? Hearing none, I'm about to move.
Well, I just wonder, like, they're working on the 4th and the 5th area, do we have any kind of date in mind when that might happen?
So with respect to the fuel management system, hoping to get some of that pricing in this week so that it can be brought forward to the 18th. It may be a little bit more aggressive, it is my hope to have it for the 18th, but we should have that shortly. And we are well underway with respect to the transferring away from our paper-based system to the citywide software with respect to the fleet.
And in addition, the final report's been received.
The final report will be received officially at council on February 24th.
You have it now.
We do now have the final report.
Are there any major changes in that report, not relative to the presentation that they gave us a month ago?
I would say nothing substantial.
Okay, so for all intents and purposes, the draft that we saw and had presented to us is if it's not the working document, it's close to it.
Yes, it would not be the working document, but close.
Okay. All right, any further questions here? Hearing none, I'm going to then 7G, which is additional financial applications. And what have I got with 7G? I just got a single page, do I not? No, I probably got two. Okay, and a recommendation that council authorize the purchase of the tax, e-notice, and custom report library applications from Munisoft and fund the purchase with modernization funds. Now, is this the one where there are two alternatives?
Through the chair, yes. There would be the Munisoft, and there was also, we did look at the citywide budgeting suite.
Okay, and what is the reason that, it just seems to me that the recommendations centers on the cheaper of the one, is that correct?
Well, that, certainly that's one component, but there's certainly far other, many other reasons why, so I'll have the treasurer speak to that.
Okay.
Certainly, through the chair. In investigating both of these applications, to start off, we had looked at e-notices over a year ago. I brought a committee, or a report to committee, just as an information item that this application was available. And without putting out a cost to that right away, we wanted to find out what kind of interest there would be on e-notices, because it was fairly significant. The nice thing is that in that interim time, Munisoft is now offering a bit of a discount to all of their applications. And as a result, we'll receive 25% discount as a loyalty discount to the applications. So I think we should definitely proceed. We see some interest in the e-notices through some of the tax inserts we've provided. Let us know whether you're interested, and we've seen some interest in that. There is a small cost because we need to dedicate an email address to send those out. But I did check with OnServe to determine that e-notices sent by an email, there should be no issue with our current email provider. So that's another really good thing. It's an easy thing to do. It's the bigger cost of the two applications. The reason why I've gone to Munisoft's custom report library as opposed to the much more expensive citywide is two or threefold. Not mainly because of the cost, but cost certainly was a factor in one of my decisions. In that, to test the waters, to put $600 down and check to see if the custom library within Munisoft can offer me the flexibility to create reports was appealing, as opposed to the $60,000 touch that Citywide was offering, the $50,000 plus $6,000 per annum. I felt the budgeting suite through Munisoft was really focused on budgeting, which seemed silly to try to buy that now when we're basically through our budget in 2020. I think if we find that the library that Munisoft offers is not robust enough, we have that opportunity to go back to Citywide and make the bigger investment in the fall or just before the fall. But I think from what I've seen from the custom library, that does give a lot of flexibility to be able to pull out multi-years, as the deputy mayor was suggesting. That was one of the reports that you can pull out actuals over a multi-year process. It does a statement of financial activities. They've created reports and are willing to assist in developing reports that are specific to the township. So, and I've worked with Munisoft, I've worked with Citywide as well, but I think Munisoft would be, knowing the software, it'll be an easier transition. I'm keeping also in consideration that right now with eScribe, we have all of our managers learning or soon to be learning a very complex system to report on agendas. And I think adding another budgeting, really complex system, it would not necessarily be the best point in time to do that. We do have in Citywide a capital planning module that we purchased previously with our asset management inventory. And I think I'd rather spend more time of my time implementing that module as opposed to adding another financial module that Citywide offers. at this point in time.
Okay, so I think I understand your reasoning. I'm looking now at the recommendation then. I'm asking to have the recommendation changed a bit. Authorize the purchase now of the tax e-notice and custom report library applications. Okay, authorize the purchase of, put in the word of, the tax e-notice and custom report library applications at a cost of, and what number will I put in there?
So it's $1,723
The fee of sort $340.
plus an annual software support fee of $345.
Plus annual support fee of what?
$345.
$345. From, just that I want the numbers to be embedded in the recommendation. So I'm gonna add that to the recommendation. At a cost of $17.23 plus annual support fee of $345 from Munisoft, and fund the purchase with modernization funds. Is that, okay? All right, so the chair is looking for a mover and a second.
Well, just, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, just a minute, I'm gonna put it on the table and then we'll discuss it. So Councillor Hunter is moving, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Cameron is seconding. Okay, now we wanted to have the discussion. Okay, so now we know the numbers we're talking about here. Well, let's start with Mr. Robertson then.
I think it's fine with me.
Okay, Mr. Mr. Bradley.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. I agree with the recommendation, by the way, but what is the budgeting system we use now, software system we use now?
We use a budget extension module within Munisoft.
Okay, so we've already got that kind of architecture.
We do.
And you mentioned in the second paragraph on page 2 that the citywide budgeting suite's more robust than the Munisoft. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Certainly. From the quote that I was provided, it's set up similar to the eScribe system in that it is a web-based program that each individual manager can then log in, put in their information, update their budget.
And it gets
sections.
consolidated then?
Gets consolidated, yeah. There's an operating plan and a capital plan. It does allow for some multi-year budgeting, which I think we definitely are going to be headed in that direction. But I think right now, with everything that's going to come out of the service delivery review, there's going to be way too many applications and not enough people to actually train on them or get them, fully used.
So moving to the Munisoft system, the one you're considering, the recommendation considers, in the budgeting module, does it kind of give you the capability of what if? You press a button and you can get a different scenario?
It allows for up to 5 different scenarios.
Okay.
It does.
Okay, so that means we can sensitize stuff then?
Yes. And I utilize those scenarios, setting a base, and then if there's
Yeah.
any changes,
Variance this way,
Create-
variance that way, whatever.
right, based on a percentage over last year, percentage over budget last year,
Yeah.
various different
Sounds
ways.
good. Yeah, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hunter.
Good to me. Try to walk before we run. Let's try the one first.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I hear exactly what Melanie's referring to. It sounds like there's gonna be a lot going on, and that's, if it's working well now, stick with it and implement it at a later time. So yes, the only additional one was, you didn't say plus HT. Is that one plus HST for that recommendation?
It would be, but we receive a majority of our HST is rebated back, so it's a very minor cost
Okay,
of
just
a
as long as I didn't
non-rebated
have to
amount.
put
Counselor Cameron,
Good to go?
Counselor Dill.
No, I'm fine, Mel's happy.
Okay,
Baby.
so then, voting in favor of the recommendation, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried, I see no opposed. Okay, so now, 24, 26. So where am I now? 7H. Page 27, 7H. And is there an I? No, there's a recommendation on the next page. And the recommendation is that committee recommends the council authorizes staff to engage Novatech, and the Novatech briefing note was on our desk tonight, to take the lead in preparing the township's submission to the job site challenge in accordance with their proposal dated January 31, and further directs that the cost of the project be covered from the Industrial Park Land Reserve Fund. Discussion, if any? Well, first of all, I need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move.
Can I have Deputy Mayor Deschamps moving? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Councillor Dillabaugh seconding. Okay, discussion, if any? Discussion? Hearing none, vote to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. All right, so that is 9. Now I'm on council expense reimbursement policy review.
Their cell phones.
And this is 7I. Now, is this, am I on page
29 or
39,
30?
39, Mr. Mayor.
31 or 39?
No, 29 and 39.
29 or 39, my God, I can't run through this. All right, I got 29 or 39 in front of me.
And then you've got 30 and 39 as well.
All right? Now, does this come with a recommendation? Yes, it does. But is the recommendation is on page?
Try and get that in your book.
30 and 39.
This is getting funny. Where is 30? Here it is here.
Did you get 30 or 39, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I have it.
And then 32.
Council recommends that, the committee recommends that council adopt the revised Schedule A, council expense reimbursement policy for bylaw 2019-63 as attached. All right, I'm a little bit discombobulated here with my paperwork, so does anyone have? Yeah. Does anyone have comments to make here? Go ahead.
If I may, so going to number 6, I don't want to go back to where we were before, but I'm going to. Back to item 6, which are our expenses. Under item I, eligible expenses for conferences includes mileage, accommodations and meals already not included in the registration fee. So the way I read that is that of those 3 items that we were talking about earlier will go into basically one column. And that one column will have an amount for myself of $4,000. Correct?
It's an expense account amount, yes.
Thank you.
Further discussion here? Chair's looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Dillabaugh is moving. Seconder, if any. Is there no seconder?
I'll second.
Oh, Councillor Deschamps, or Deputy Mayor Deschamps is seconding. Further discussion, if any? Looks like none. Those in favor of the recommendation, please signify. And I notice you fellas are not voting. Okay, I declare the motion, I declare it carried. All right, so that was page 30 of 39. Council expense, now I'm on page 31 of 30, well, no.
38 and 39.
You jump forward.
Yeah.
All these pages.
Yep.
7J.
It's a good thing, to the treasurer, it's a good thing these pages are numbered, or I would be totally lost.
I didn't number them.
On the digital format, it's great.
They're numbered.
Mine's pretty slick.
Industrial park, electrical needs study.
Okay,
Sorry about his outfit.
right, industrial park hydro needs study. When the recommendation here, you saw the purchase order from BIC. The recommendation that committee recommends that council authorizes staff to engage Bioindustrial Innovation Canada to take the lead in preparing the industrial park electrical needs project with an upset limit of $12,000, and further directs that the cost of the project be covered from the industrial park land reserve. Chair's looking for a mover and a second. Okay, Councillor Hunter moving and Deputy Mayor Deschamps seconding. Discussion of any? Go ahead.
Mine's gonna go backwards a tiny bit, and we've already passed and made it okay, but as we're going through items, through number 7 items for, you know, the additional financial applications, the job site challenge application, and now to 7J, in the recommendation there were dollar values. In 7H there wasn't, but under the financial consideration there was. So should it be in the financial consideration line of 7H that it's the 25,000 plus HST?
There was no dollar value there?
It's in the financial considerations, but it's not in the recommendation, and it is in the recommendation everywhere else.
Okay, well, I missed that, and I shouldn't have, but I did.
On that, 2739 now, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. But the point is that the recommendation itself doesn't contain the upset limit here. And we voted on it. I wish you would have caught that sooner. Because it really, I just think that it's important that when we pass a recommendation that the number is included in the recommendation. But I don't want to go back because the motion, the recommendation has been moved and seconded and carried.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
We'll just add it into the recommendation when it gets to council.
Okay, that's.
The motion that council can have the dollars in it, I mean.
Yeah, okay, all right.
But that could be said for all of the motions that you pass tonight.
Yes, but if we catch it now, we catch it now. We should be doing our jobs. She nods her head approvingly. Yes. I told you so. I told you so.
She does not go have to worry about catching it.
But thank you very much for bringing that up. So now I have a mover and a seconder for this recommendation, discussion of any.
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Well, good, we do need to do it. My thing is this Bioindustry Industrial Innovation Canada. Is there no one closer, like in Eastern Ontario, than Sarnia?
Well,
To this, or yes or no, or?
the engineer is here, if I can put it that way, because, well, there's a long story here, but, I mean, clearly, Bioindustrial Innovation Canada is the organization that we've been working with in conjunction with the commission for a better part of a year. And they've opened an office now here in Eastern Ontario. They've hired the engineer. The engineer is about to begin an analysis of a project, but he had a bit of time between the time that he was hired and the time that that project started. And I wanted to have this hydro study done. And by the way, I just want to report that out of the 8 or so letters that I sent to all of the major industries in the Johnstown Industrial Park area, everyone except one has signed on to the project to a greater or lesser degree. And I'll explain about that in a minute. The only one that hasn't signed on at this point in time is Prysmian. And they're by far the largest user of electricity in our industrial park. All the others have signed on. And the tragedy of this whole situation is that as these industries sign on, there's a form which, if they sign the form, Hydro will download to the engineer within 5 minutes all of the information that he needs. We didn't know that until today. So he spent the better part of the last 2 weeks working with individual businesses to try to get them to give him their highs, their lows, their demands on a sort of a day-by-day basis. Now that he knows that the information is available with their signature, the report will come together very, very quickly. My job is to get 2 holdouts to sign, one of which is the Prescott Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is a consumer of electricity, and the other one is to get the signature from Prysmian. All the others are there. And the real tragedy of it is that Ontario Hydro has the information on an industry by industry basis. But no place in Ontario Hydro do they take a backward look and say, holy cow, there's a cluster here of industries. We haven't looked to see whether we're meeting the total demand in that cluster. They may be meeting the demand in the cluster just by luck. This one needs it on the early morning and that one reaches, this one reaches his peak on the early morning and that one reaches his peak in the afternoon. They don't even know that. Now, significantly, for the first time, Ontario Hydro, or it's not Ontario Hydro, it's the Independent Electricity Service Operators, IESP. They're convening a meeting in Belleville on March the 11th to look at the entire region. This will be the first time that they've ever done this. So I'll go to the meeting on the 11th, and I'm hopeful to have this chap's report with me. So, I don't want to belabor this. I have the recommendation in front of me. Is there any other discussion?
Well, I have a couple of ideas or questions. The review gets done by this engineer, and it tries to delineate what the future needs are going to be. And that then goes through the chain of command to the Ontario Hydro people, or whoever it is that's going to upgrade the plant. But we know the existing plant is not in that great a shape. Ontario Hydro's plant is aged and a lot of it needs to be upgraded. Whether that part does or not is, I'm not aware of. But do we run the risk that we can't get the expansion done in a timely fashion because Ontario Hydro don't want to put something on to a plant that needs to be upgraded, extend the plant that needs to be upgraded?
That's the whole reason for doing the study. Because we know that Giant Tiger has plans, they've told us this, it's public, to expand. And that will require an increase in their demand.
But that old plant that's there now, the one that's, a lot of it's dated and needs to be upgraded.
And we know that if we know that when Giant Tiger goes, or any other industry in our industrial park, goes looking for additional electricity, and Hydro can't supply it, it's a 5 to 7 year lead time because of exactly what you're saying. The old plant needs to be upgraded. Those things take 5 to 7 years of lead time. That's why this study is really so important.
So are we too late with this, or?
Well, what we don't know is the definitive time for each of the potential future developments. If one of those industries, and I mean I talk to them all every year, twice a year if possible, if they decide that they're moving forward with a major capital project in 2021, and they find out as they apply for their increased hydro usage that it's not available, then they're stymied, plain and simple, for a 5 to 7 year period until the infrastructure gets rebuilt.
And we know, we don't have a lot of land in there left, but if somebody came along tomorrow that had high KVA needs, would they be able to provide it?
We don't know. We don't know. Okay, I'm gonna, if that answers your question, I'm gonna
Yeah.
call the question on the recommendation. Those in favor? Okay, so that's carried. And where am I now?
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
No,
Over the page.
over the next page. Council inquiries, notices of motion,
I got one.
going around the table. Go ahead.
Okay, it's just for the Public Works Environmental Services meeting next Tuesday, the 18th. Not the Monday, it's because it's Family Day, it will be on the 18th. I will be bringing forward a notice of motion regarding vacant buildings in our township, and I will, between now and the meeting, I will supply staff with a sample bylaw for them to go over. So I would like that on the agenda for Public Works.
Okay, so you're in charge of the agenda.
I know.
Any other notices of motion? Okay, I'm going to bring something forward, and I spoke about it earlier, and that is the vehicle repair maintenance, and I'm particularly interested as it comes to Public Works. And I would like to have us commission a report of our Public Works vehicles, a full report of our existing vehicles. Make, model, serial number, age, mileage, and if possible, expenditures to date on each of the vehicles. I believe we should have a look at that, and we should monitor that a little bit closely. So I'm going to ask if there's consensus around the table to receive that kind of a report, and I think it probably would be best brought forward. I know it would probably not be possible to get it for the budget meeting on Thursday night. No, it's next Thursday. Is it this Thursday or next Thursday?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday. Could it be possible for next Thursday? Well, let's first of all see whether or not we've got a consensus to get that kind of a report. So name, age, model, make, model, serial number, mileage, and expenditures, repair expenditures to date, maintenance expenditures to date. Is there a consensus to have the staff prepare that kind of a report and bring it forward? Yes or no? Going around the table. Mr. Roberts.
I think it would be helpful.
Thank you. Mr. Bradley.
Absolutely.
Mr. Councilor Cameron. Councilor Hunter.
Shouldn't be hard to get.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes, what time frame are you?
Well, let's
referring
deal
to?
with whether or not it's
All
gonna
right.
happen
Okay,
first.
all right.
Absolutely. Okay, now, how soon, Mr. CEO, can you have this kind of report put together? Can somebody have the report put together?
Certainly somebody can have the report put together. Are we looking at it for the budget meeting on the 20th?
Can you make that deadline?
We will give it the college try.
That's all we ask. Thank you very much. Okay, anything else to bring up here? Under councilor notices?
Are you looking for 2020? Are you looking for 2019? What time, how far back do you want?
Well, I mean, if the vehicle is 5 years old, we'll get 5 years.
Okay.
What's it cost us so far?
Per vehicle, okay.
All right, are there any other council inquiries or notices of motion? Hearing none, I'm about to move on. Item number 9 is the mayor's report. I'm gonna be fairly quick. About 4 items to talk about. First of all, I think everyone is aware of the Jones Rail bit of business they brought in with the movement of the military equipment from base Petawawa. 40-some flat cars loaded over the weekend of February 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and moved out on Thursday, February the 6th. Nice piece of business, and I know that Mr. Jones was happy to get it.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, I was in the restaurant and one of those vehicles went by and it is a monster.
Yep.
Little guy sitting there.
Fairly impressive.
And they can travel.
Didn't he ever? He was roaring.
Okay, next item, the Cedar Grove Road Job Site Challenge brochure. I distributed it at a previous meeting. I think our lady Wendy has done an excellent job with it. I haven't had any comments on it, so I'm about to have a few copies printed up at a local printer for distribution. I think it'll serve us well. I would encourage all members of this committee and all members of council, for certain, to talk this up a bit. I would like to get ahead of the curve in case that there's any pushback at any point along the way. In that regard, I just want to let the committee know that I've started what's called the Aboriginal consultations. We've sent letters informing them of what's happening to all our contacts at the Mohawks of Akwesasne, and the clerk just finished a letter for me today that will be going to the Algonquins. And you may or may not recall that during our official plan process, the Algonquins of Ontario responded to our planner, and they sent us a map showing what they consider to be their traditional lands. And that map was included as an appendix to our official plan, and that map shows that their traditional territory, if you like, does overlap the township quite significantly, actually. But just to let you know that. Now, last thing, Enbridge Gas. So just a little bit of, not recent, but history. And I'm not gonna go back as far as the meeting that Deborah and I went to in Toronto, where we made our pitch to the Ontario Energy Board at the time where they were still considering a change to the regime under which new projects are financed. But on one of the significant things that happened after the new government was elected was that the Ontario Energy Board reversed the position that they had taken as a result of the initial consultations. In the initial consultations, they refused to grant the concept of cross-subsidization, where existing customers would pay so much a month on their bills, on their existing bills, to finance the extension and expansion of the natural gas system throughout Ontario. So after the new government came in, that decision was reversed along about June or July of 2018, I guess it would be. And since that time, Union Gas has been amalgamated with Enbridge, and they've been collecting $2 per bill, as I understand it, and that money's been put into a separate pot of money, if I can put it that way. And on December the 17th, the provincial government released a news release. I'm just going to read it. Today, Associate Minister of Energy Bill Walker announced that the government is expanding access to natural gas to more families and businesses throughout the rural northern Ontario and Indigenous communities. The Ontario Energy Board will begin the process of collecting information about natural gas expansion opportunities across Ontario and develop a report on eligible projects for the ministry in early 2020. The Ontario Energy Board will deliver its report to the government by August 2020, after which the government will make a final decision on future expansion projects eligible to receive support through the government's natural gas expansion program. That's as far as I'm going to go. But they have announced that they're going to release $310 million from that fund for expansion projects. When we were at Roma, we made contact with the Enbridge folks behind the booth, and we're trying to rebuild our contacts within the Enbridge system now that our union contacts are pretty much all gone, Because during the amalgamation, when Union Gas was swallowed up by Enbridge, a lot of the people that we were working with disappeared, retired, moved on to other assignments. So we lost Danny Watson, we had good connection with. We lost, can't remember the other fellow's name, but we gained some new. So our newest contact, two of them, is a lady named Sonia Fazzari, headquartered in Toronto. And our new regional director is Luke Scarup, whose office is in North Bay. Now, Sonia called today to say that I will be getting a letter from Luke this week saying, Mr. Mayor, we know that at one point your township was interested in the expansion of natural gas. I need an expression of your interest immediately so that we can submit your so that we can resubmit your projects to the Ontario Energy Board under this announcement that you've just heard. So that letter will be coming. I intend to answer that letter as soon as I get it, put my answer on township letterhead and submit it. Because we have identified the project on County Road 2, which is between Blair Road and North Channel Drive, and we've also identified the expansion north along Weir Road into Spencerville and covering Spencerville Village and perhaps a little bit further. So, my inside contacts, the guys that still remain, tell me, Pat, your project is still on our list. We still have it priced. We're still ready to build. Get your letter back to Luke as quick as you can get it. So that brings you up to date on that one.
So, Mr. Mayor, all that data we provided them with respect to number of houses and blah, blah, blah is in their hands then?
That's correct.
Okay, great.
And they've done a lot of work
Yeah.
since then.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my report. There's nobody here for the question period.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Is that my high-speed internet that's coming down number 2? In front of Curry's?
Supposedly.
Now, you know, that's an interesting question. Have you stopped to talk to those chaps?
Haven't been here.
You know what they're installing?
No.
Well, they're installing conduit,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see that.
fairly substantial conduit.
Yeah.
And they're installing it, as near as I can see, the full length of Cardinal to Johnstown.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah. I suspect
Already
it's for
in
that.
Johnstown.
Yes, good big sections of Johnstown.
Oh, yeah, backyards, whole 9 yards.
All directional.
I suspect it's high-speed stuff.
So, and I haven't had a chance to stop and talk to the guys yet.
I have, and it is high speed, and they're from Perth who's doing it for contract. I don't know what company, but it is for fiber.
It is for fiber.
Yeah,
High fiber.
that's what the workers told me.
The big thing is, that I don't understand, is that there's already a fiber optic cable going the full length from Cardinal to Prescott. There's just no nodes that we can tie into at this point.
That's right along the railroad.
No, goes right along County Road 2,
Oh, you're kidding.
the fiber optic cable, yeah.
But why can't, though, I don't understand it, if there is, why isn't Bell offering it? Bell's only got dial-up in Johnstown, if you can believe it, Bell Canada.
Yes, that's correct.
Dial-up.
Yeah.
Now, if you can believe it, but they got fiber in the houses above by DuPont, there's 4 or 5 houses there, they got fiber, figure that one out. Up from Bell Canada.
Okay, so I can't answer that question. But my pay grade.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, it's so, you know, they told me when I asked, it was a they screwed up, they hit and missed different areas instead of going through the big area, so anyways.
Yeah, who really knows what's going on? Okay, so I've got to get to the closed session.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Augusta Township, I believe, had a resolution of some months back, 2 or 3 months back, where they would be sending to Edwardsburg Cardinal some payment for arena, $29,000 or something of that nature. Any word on that? Are we ever going to see that?
Mr. CAO.
As of right yet, I have not seen anything and heard any more.
So, let me, through the CAO, if I can, to the treasurer. Now, first of all, it hasn't obviously come up at any of your meetings with the CAO from Augusta.
That is correct.
All right. Have we considered, and I guess we shouldn't do this until I have a chance to talk to Mayor Malenka, who's in Germany right now, but have we considered sending him an invoice?
For what?
Eh?
For what?
In recognition for their, in recognition for their motion.
I have nothing formal to
I know.
prompt me to do that, so.
$80,000,
Oh, I think it was 20.
And they haven't,
40 each year,
Yeah.
2019, 2020,
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
I stand
80,000.
corrected. I stand corrected, you're right.
okay, so I know that they're still working on their budget, and I think that they're not nearly as far advanced as we are. Let's just hope that they've
Considered.
considered it, yes. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm looking for the motion to go into a closed session.
Myself, second by Deputy Mayor Dishon, committee of the whole proceed in closed session at 8:51 PM in order to address a matter pending to proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, specifically industrial land.
All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. So 5-minute break.
Deputy Mayor Dishon, the closed meeting is now adjourned and the open meeting of the committee of the whole is now resumed at 9:14 PM.
Those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, and so reporting out of the closed session. The closed session discussed a potential or possible offer to purchase for a piece of land owned by the township, and after discussion, provided direction to staff. Chair is looking for the motion to adjourn the meeting.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Cameron, that the committee of the whole does now adjourn at 9:15 PM. Thank you.
There you go. Those in favor? Aye. Motion is